A lady who has been married for 18 years has an affair with a 20-year-old man. When her husband finds out, he beats the younger man and then files for divorce. It was quiet when Joseph opened the front door to the house he had lived with Maddie for almost 20 years. He could hear his heartbeat. The room was very quiet, with only soft music coming down from the bedroom upstairs to break the spell. He got back from his work trip earlier than planned so that he could surprise Maddie and maybe take her out to dinner without telling her. It felt like every step up the stairs was filled with dread about what was to come. The bedroom door was just a little open, and Joseph's world fell apart through that tiny opening. In that room, where they shared their happiness and sadness, he saw Maddie with a young man who looked a lot like the son of their neighbor, who was in college. Joseph was filled with a flood of anger and shock. When caught, the young man climbed out of bed and stumbled past Joseph, saying he was sorry. Joseph just stood there, his eyes fixed on Maddie. She looked messy, her eyes were wide with shock, and she was trying to find the right words but couldn't. The quiet that followed was unbearable. Joseph felt like he was being hit by a tornado of feelings, and each one was stronger than the last. It made him want to scream and demand answers, but he couldn't. He turned away and left the room, the picture of Maddie cheating on him still fresh in his mind. In the downstairs living room, Joseph paced back and forth, his every step reflecting his racing thoughts. How long had this been going on? Did he not see that the trust and love he used to have for Maddie had gone away, leaving a huge hole filled with pain and anger? He was thinking when he heard Maddie's timid steps coming down the stairs. She stood there, not far from him, with tears in her eyes. "Joseph, I can explain," she said in a whisper that was hard to hear. "Explain?" Joseph's answer was cold and lacked the love that used to color his words. "How on earth can you explain this, Maddie? After 18 years, for a short affair?" Joseph pulled away from Maddie when she reached out to touch him. She said, "I didn't mean to hurt you." But her voice was shaking. "Hurt me?" The way Joseph laughed was mean and not at all funny. "You did a lot more. Our marriage and family are broken because of you. Everything was just a show." Following the talk, Maddie's regret and Joseph's disappointment were mixed together. The damage was too great to fix. Once full of love and warmth, the house now looked like a war zone, with broken promises all over the place. He stayed awake all night in his study, hearing the sounds of a life he thought he knew. As dawn broke, he made up his mind about what to do. He would ask for a divorce, but it would be more than just a split. He was determined to leave Maddie with as little money as possible by using his smarts about money. This was not a normal divorce. Joseph wanted to get back in charge and make Maddie pay for betraying him, so he filed for divorce. Even as dawn broke on a new day, Joseph's resolve did not waver. Even though his heart was broken, he was more determined than ever. The outside world didn't know about the changes in Joseph's life as dawn broke and cast its early light. His choice, which he made by himself in his study, set off a day that would become the beginning of a bitter legal battle. While sitting at his desk, Joseph looked through his contacts. He stopped when he saw the name of the well-known divorce lawyer Martin Reed. He took a deep breath and then called. It was a short chat that ended with an appointment for the next day. After ending the call, Joseph felt a heavy sense of determination. He was about to start a trip that would change many people's lives, but he didn't give up. When Joseph walked into Martin Reed's office, he was greeted by a polite and professional staff, but this didn't help his angry desire for revenge. Martin, a guy in his late 50s, was known for always looking out for his clients' best interests. His office was filled with different awards and titles that showed how good he was at law. "Mr. Joseph Allen," Martin started, his voice steady and sure. "Divorce cases can be complicated, especially when there are a lot of assets involved. What do you want to achieve?" Joseph answered calmly, his voice steady even though he was feeling upset inside. "I want a divorce, and it's important that my wife doesn't get much money from me. She lied to me, and I'm determined to protect what I've worked for." Martin looked at Joseph with sharp eyes. "I understand. However, you should know that courts usually lean towards a balanced distribution of assets." Joseph's eyes didn't move. I'm not worried about being fair. Because I have a background in business, I know how to protect assets. I'm ready to look into all of our legal choices. Martin agreed with a small smile on his face. It is possible to use offshore accounts, trusts, and other financial tricks to make the asset split process more complicated. But these methods need to be used carefully and privately. The next chat went into great detail about how to keep assets safe. Joseph told them everything they needed to know about his finances, including his stocks, real estate holdings, and business interests. Martin paid close attention, took notes, and started making a plan right away. As soon as Joseph left Martin's office, he began to see a clear plan. He knew that the coming months would be hard because they would involve a lot of different legal and business strategies. In order to win, he was willing to do anything, even if it meant putting Maddie in financial trouble. When I got home, the house looked like an empty shell, devoid of the love and warmth it once held. After Maddie left, Joseph was left to think about things by himself, with only the beating of the grandfather clock to keep him aware of how quickly time moves. As Joseph thought about what he was going to do next, he realized that this fight was about more than just money. In revenge, it was about taking back control of a life that had been thrown into chaos. Even though there were huge risks and a lot of moral and ethical questions, Joseph's path was clearly chosen. He was determined to see this through, no matter what it cost him personally. The courtroom felt like a strange place because of how serious it was compared to the chaos in her life. Joseph was sitting across from her. He looked like someone she didn't know, and his face was blank and unreadable. As soon as the court case started, Maddie felt a wave of nervousness. She was sure Joseph had a plan, but she wasn't sure what it was or how big it was. Joseph's lawyer, Martin Reed, was the first to speak up with a cool and authoritative tone. He drew attention to Joseph's financial help and painted Maddie as a wasteful spender, which made her feelings even worse. In reaction, Maddie's lawyer, Sarah, a young but devoted lawyer, emphasized Maddie's important role as a caring wife and mother, focusing on the things she did for the couple that weren't related to money. During the back and forth of the court case, Maddie couldn't help but think about the times she and Joseph had worked together and overcome life's challenges. She remembered his laugh, the loving look in his eyes, and the way he looked at her. It felt like these memories were echoes from a very long time ago. Then they talked about how to split their assets. Martin gave a detailed account of Joseph's money problems, but Maddie thought the numbers were wrong. She noticed properties she didn't know and accounts that looked like they were empty, which made her think that Joseph had been moving assets around in a way that hid their true value. Sarah tried to argue these financial discrepancies, but Martin skillfully got around her objections by saying that legal matters are complicated and must be kept private. Maddie felt more and more helpless and stuck in Joseph's carefully planned strategy because of this. Maddie felt confused and unimportant as the day went on because of all the complicated legal and financial terms that kept coming up. Maddie felt a huge sense of dread when the court session ended at the end of the day. The lawyers were using very smart strategies. Maddie thought about her situation that night while she was alone in her friend's hotel room. She was ready for a tough breakup, but she didn't fully expect how far Joseph would go to get back at her. It was scary to think that we might end up with nothing. Her reliance on Joseph for money, which had been her safety net, was now being slowly taken away. Her thoughts went to their kids, who were with Joseph at the moment. She felt helpless when she thought about them being stuck in the middle of this fight. She wanted to shield them from the harshness of the court case but couldn't. Maddie realized that their fight was about more than money while she was lying in bed and thinking about what had happened that day. She was fighting for her honor, fair treatment, and the chance to start over with her life. She decided that she would fight not only for herself but also for her children's future. Maddie met Sarah the next morning, and her resolve was stronger than ever. They talked about how to stop Joseph's scheme to steal her money, and showed that he was trying to ruin her financially. Maddie knew the trip would be hard, but she was ready to fight for her rights. The fight for her future had begun, and she was determined to see it through to the end. Maddie was sitting in her rented apartment, which was very simply decorated and very dark. It was very different from the bright, and cozy home she used to share with Joseph and their children. The empty space was reflected by the bare walls. She thought. She looked out the window and thought about things that were far away. Worries about money were getting heavier as the city lights faded into what looked like stars in the faraway sky. It was devastatingly successful for Joseph's legal tactics. The money and things she thought were part of their shared life had been cleverly hidden or moved, leaving her with only a small part of what she had hoped for. Sarah, her lawyer, was fighting hard, but the court case felt like a never-ending chase after a mysterious, always changing enemy. Maddie's mind went back to the early days of their marriage. She remembered how she had supported Joseph's work goals while putting their family first. The unfairness of her situation was very clear to her. She used to feel safe relying on Joseph for money, but now her biggest weakness was that she needed him so much. When her phone rang, it brought her back to the real world. It was Sarah, who was cautiously hopeful. "Maddie, I've been looking over Joseph's financial documents once more. There are mistakes we can fight, but it won't be easy." Maddie asked seriously. "What are our odds?" With a deep sigh that mixed hope and worry. "It's an uphill battle," Sarah said after a short pause. "He has done a good job of hiding his tracks. I do believe there is a chance for us, though. Our attention must stay on the task at hand." When the call ended, Maddie felt a strong urge to do something again. She was determined not to let Joseph's plans affect her future. She had to fight for what was rightfully hers, not only for her own good, but also for her security and sense of self-worth. In the days that followed, Maddie put all of her energy into the court fight. A lot of time was spent with Sarah going over papers and making plans. Together, they looked into every legal option to find out about and stop Joseph's financial schemes. But the fight wasn't just about the law. It was also very emotional. Maddie dealt with her own shame and guilt over cheating on her husband. She knew she had something to do with how their marriage fell apart, but Joseph's punishment seemed too harsh. The divorce made her feel bad, which made it hard for her to connect with her kids. During their rare visits, she could tell they were upset and confused. She felt her parents' pain because they were old enough to notice but too young to fully understand. She wanted to say sorry, explain, and show understanding, but words didn't seem right. Maddie was having a hard time with the ongoing court battle as the weeks turned into months. She used to be sure of herself and full of life, but now she had worry and times of feeling hopeless. But it was during these hard times that she found a strength she hadn't known she had before. She slowly but surely started to rebuild her life, using her newfound strength and freedom. Maddie focused on getting a job and getting back on his own financially. Additionally, she joined a support group where she could find comfort in hearing the stories of other people who had been through similar things. The trip was long and hard, but each day she got stronger and could do things on her own. Maddie still had a long way to go in her fight for the money she was owed, but she was not the same person she was before. She was ready to face the challenges that lay ahead, with a strong sense of purpose and unwavering drive. When their divorce was completed, Joseph waited in his car outside the courthouse for a while. The papers were sitting next to him on the seat. His plan worked out well. Maddie was now only getting a small amount of money, which was very different from her previous life, which was comfortable and stable. However, as Joseph looked at the courtroom, he felt a deep sense of emptiness. He was sleepy on the way back home, and his mind was full of mixed feelings. Waves of doubt and regret mixed with feelings of victory. When he got home, it was quiet, which made him realize how much his angry actions had hurt others. As he walked through the house, each room brought back memories of happy times, fights, and loving times with others. After his never-ending desire for revenge, they stood there like empty shells. As Joseph settled down in his study, he let out a long, tired sigh. Using his knowledge of money to bring about Maddie's downfall, he had put so much work into the legal procedures. But in the silence that followed, the expected sweetness of success was bitter and empty. He thought about Maddie, not the woman who had hurt him, but the woman he had loved deeply in the past. He remembered her beautiful smile, the way her eyes sparkled when she laughed, and all the dreams and plans they had made together in the past. Had his need to get back at her made him lose sight of who she really was, the woman he had promised to love and cherish? The sound of his children, Mia and Ethan, coming home from school stopped Joseph in his thoughts. The loving voices that used to be familiar to him now seemed like faraway echoes of a better time that he had broken. The look of confusion and pain in their eyes told him they were having a hard time getting used to this new world. Joseph understood that what he had done hurt not only Maddie but also the people he loved the most. In the weeks that followed, Joseph thought about what he had done. He admitted that his anger had taken over him and was affecting those around him. He began to understand that his desire for payback, while satisfying at the time, had come at a high personal cost, hurting his relationship with Maddie, his children's mental health, and his own peace of mind. At the same time, Maddie was slowly rebuilding her life with strength and drive. Even though she had money problems, she found strength in being independent. Finding work gave her a sense of purpose, even if it meant living in less style than before. At first, her relationship with her kids was tense, but it started to get better as they saw how hard she worked to give them a safe and caring home. And finally, Joseph reached out to Maddie. They met at a cafe, a neutral spot that was full of memories of the past they both had. At first, they were hesitant to talk, but as it went on, they both admitted and felt bad about the pain they had caused each other and their children. The meeting ended without any emotional reconciliations or rekindled feelings of love, but both parents agreed to raise their children together with respect and understanding. As Joseph drove home, he had a sense of closure. There was no longer any fighting, so it was time to heal and move on. The end of Joseph and Maddie's marriage marked the beginning of a new part of their lives. One that is based on past events and leads to self-reflection, healing, and a hopeful look ahead to the future.